On the night of September 10th, 2002, five friends were out on their dive boat in the ocean just off the coast of Croatia. They were gearing up to do a nighttime scuba dive, and they were in this specific location for a very specific reason, and that was just beneath them on the ocean floor, there was an underwater cave, and apparently this cave was very interesting, and the group wanted to explore it. Well, almost all the group. Just before the dive commenced, a 31-year-old named Miroslav, he told the other four divers that he actually really wasn't interested in going into this cave. He really had no cave diving experience. It was probably beyond his experience level. He wasn't a trained cave diver. And so the other four, they said, okay, well, we'll go in there and then you can just do like an open water nighttime dive if you want. And he said, yeah, okay. So he took his time kind of getting ready because he was going to be diving alone anyways, which is something that really in practice you should never do. But either way, the four friends who were going into the cave, they got in the water, they made their way down to the ocean floor, and there they would have found the entrance to this cave. It was a 2-meter wide hole basically in the ocean floor, and one by one, they made their way into this cave. Now, how this cave is set up is as soon as you go through that 2-meter wide hole, the walls kind of narrow in, and there's a 15-meter deep vertical shaft, and that shaft splits into two other shafts. And one of those shafts goes to a big underwater cavern called the Shallow Gallery. And the other shaft kind of goes off to the side and then goes much deeper, and it goes down to what's called the Deep Gallery, which is another vast underwater cavern. And at the bottom of the Deep Gallery, it's about 54 meters or 180 feet deep. So it's a deep and dangerous cave to go into. And right after the four friends, they got into this cave, they pretty much all immediately realized that this was way above their skill level. The walls are tight in there. You're kicking up silt the whole time off the walls. And so visibility is zero. You can't see anything. And it doesn't matter if you have a flashlight. A flashlight just turns the black water in front of your face into orange water in front of your face. And I mean, you couldn't see your hand in front of your face. So immediately, the four dive buddies, they turn around and they get out of there. Meanwhile, Miroslav, he got in the water about 10 minutes after his four friends. And we have no idea why, but he changed his mind. He decided he was going to follow his friends into the cave. But he had no way of knowing that his friends, again, had immediately left the cave. So they probably kind of passed each other along the way. But again, it's pitch black, it's nighttime. His friends had no idea that he had gone down to the cave. He had no idea that his friends had left the cave. Either way, he got down to the cave entrance, and again, I don't know why, but he decided to go in there after his friends. And we know all of this information that I'm about to tell you from his dive computer. So he goes into that 2-meter wide hole in the ocean floor. He swims down the 15-meter shaft, and then he gets to that part where it V's. And he makes his way directly down to the Deep Gallery. So he gets all the way down to where he gets into that vast cavern where, presumably visibility would have increased when he was out of those shafts where he was kicking up all that silt. But he went all the way down to 165 feet of depth. And on scuba, you can't really stay at that depth for very long. I'm not sure exactly how long he stayed down there, but at some point he realized he was running a little low on air. He needed to make his way out of there. So he went back up to that shaft that leads to the Deep Gallery, and he made his way all the way up that shaft back to where it V's. And presumably, he was trying to find the exit. But when you're underwater in zero visibility, I cannot express to you from many years of experience how easy it is to be completely disoriented, not even be able to tell up from down some of the time. Well, either way, he did not choose the shaft that led to the exit. Instead, he chose the shaft that went into the Shallow Gallery. So he followed that, presumably thinking he was making his way towards the exit, but then just ended up in this other vast cavern underwater. And then at that point, we know again from his dive computer, he was running dangerously low on air. He needed to make his way out of there immediately. So he turned around and he found the shaft that leads back up to that V again. And again, he would definitely by now be wanting to choose the shaft that leads to the exit. But unfortunately, he chose the shaft that he had just come from. He chose the shaft that led back down to the deep gallery. So he swam all the way down that shaft and then found himself back in the deep gallery. And at this point, he was basically completely out of air. He did not have any air to get back to the surface. So he swam up as fast as he could to the top of the deep gallery, and there he found a shallow air pocket. But that air pocket was very, very small, just a shallow pocket of air, and then there's just stone above him. So he just sat there for a little while. There would have been only a minute or two of breathable air probably in that shaft. Well, actually, no, there was 5 minutes. Again, we know that because of his dive computer. He just sat in that air pocket, completely trapped under like 100 feet of water in an area where he knows nobody can get to him by the time he runs out of air. And so then Miroslav did something that is hard to believe, but I guess when you're faced with drowning or suffocation, it's maybe the better choice. I'm not sure. But Miroslav, he chose to take his own way out. He took out his dive knife, and again, he's completely out of air at this point. After 5 minutes of being in that air pocket, presumably he ran out of air. He took his dive knife and he jammed it into the left side of his chest, 11 centimeters deep. I don't know if this caused him to lose consciousness, but we know that it didn't kill him because unfortunately, Miroslav, whether he was conscious or unconscious, would go under the water and he would drown. And we know that from the coroner's report. They can tell, if you are inhaling water and you drown, they can tell that. And that was the cause of death. It wasn't blood loss from the stab wound. So unfortunately, even though he tried, he still would end up drowning. Now, meanwhile, his friends on the surface have no idea what's going on. They have no way to communicate with Miroslav. But eventually, when he didn't return to the surface after, 40 minutes to an hour, they know that he would have been out of air. So they contacted authorities, and a police dive team would come out and they would figure out, he must have gone down in this cave. And this police dive team went in there after him. And unfortunately, one of those police divers on this initial rescue dive or recovery dive became disoriented and became separated and made basically the exact same mistake that Miroslav made. He just went back and forth between the different caverns, not able to find his way out, running out of air super rapidly until eventually he just completely ran out of air. And I believe he drowned in the shallow gallery. I'll probably do a deeper dive on that, no pun intended, on a later story. But yeah, Miroslav's decision to go into that cave not only cost him his own life, but it cost a police diver their life as well. Now, if any of you are into scuba diving or ever want to get into scuba diving, I cannot stress enough how important it is that you never try something that's beyond your training level. And notice I didn't say comfort level, because what happens is after many years of diving, your comfort level is going to probably be much more inflated than your actual skill level. Now, that's not true for everyone, but I'm actually kind of ashamed to admit it has been the case with me on many times. I mean, I've broken many rules as far as I used to dive alone all the time, which is a big no-no. If you're 150 feet underwater and you're alone and you suffer a massive equipment failure, you're going to die. The only hope that you have is that somebody is with you that can help you out. But if you're alone, you're done. But, after many years of commercial diving or underwater welding, and then many years as a professional diver for the Department of the Navy as a defense contractor, I have to admit, my ego was inflated. I thought, I have the skills to get out of any situation, but that just simply is not the case. You never go beyond your training. Don't make the decision that Miroslav did and do something you're completely unprepared for.